Hi everyone, welcome to the optometriosis. Today the topic is what is visual acuity and components of visual acuity. What is Snellen chart and LOGMAR chart? Let's learn with me. Now, what is visual acuity? Visual acuity measures the ability of the eye to distinguish shapes and the details of objects at a given distance. Resolving power of eye, reciprocal of the minimum resolvable angle measured in minutes of arc for a standard test pattern. In simply, we tell visual acuity how clearly we can see, how well your eyes can see small details like reading letters on the chart. Next slide, we see the types of visual acuity. First one, minimum detectable. Second one, minimum separable or resolvable. Third one, minimum recognizable or cognizable. Fourth one, minimum discriminable or hyperacuity. Now we can see one by one. Minimum detectable is the smallest object or difference in light that the eye can detect but not necessarily resolve or identify its shape. We simply explain it is not about shape or detail, just light detection. Now you can see that picture. It often tested using a spot of light on a dark background or vice versa. It measures the ability of the retina and visual system to detect the presence of stimulus. Minimum separable. Minimum separable refers to the smallest distance between two objects or features that the eye can perceive as separate. It tests the eye ability to distinguish two distinct points or lines as separate. Commonly tested using with grating patterns. You can see that pictures like black and white strips. For example, distinguishing two close dots as separate, not merged. Seeing the gap between lines in a grating with a break. Minimum cognizable or recognizable. It refers to the smallest size at which a person can correctly identify a name or an object or a symbol or letter. It is most commonly measured from a visual acuity in clinicals. Last, minimum discriminable. It is also called hyperacuity. The smallest detectable difference or misalignment between visual stimuli. It often smaller than the diameter of photoreceptor, hence called hyperacuity. Only it's about detective relative position, not size, shape, or recognition. This is the most precise form of visual acuity and can exceed the limits of retinal resolution. For example, in vernier acuity, detecting whether one line is slightly offset from another. In stereo acuity, detecting slight difference in depth using binocular vision. In bisection acuity, judging whether a line bisects a gap evenly. Next, Snellen chart. It was invented by Professor Hermann Snellen in 1863. The Snellen chart is the most widely used chart for measuring minimum recognizable. It assesses how well a person can identify letters or symbols at a standardized distance. It contains a row of letters called optotypes of decreasing size. Each row is labeled with a visual acuity value like 6 by 6, 6 by 12, 6 by 16 meters or 20 by 20, 20 by 40 in feet. The top letter is the largest, usually an E. As you go down, the letters get smaller and more numerous. The main characteristic of the Snellen chart is optotypes. The optotypes used on the Snellen charts are standardized symbol or letters designed to test a person's visual acuity. The letter E is commonly used optotypes in Snellen chart. It is presented in different orientations up, down, left, right. The tumbling E chart is specially designed for people who cannot read or illiterate. And letters have such a breadth that they will subtend at an angle of 1 minute at the nodal point of the eye at a particular distance. We all know that minutes of arc. Now we can see a small brief of minutes of arc. A minutes of arc is a unit angular measurement used to describe as very small angles, especially in visual acuity. 1 degree is equal to 60 minutes of arc. The 1 minute of arc is equal to 1 by 60 of a degree. So a minute of arc is a very small angle. In the smallest angle that the human eye can typically resolve under normal condition is about 1 minute of arc. This is the basis for Snellens 6 by 6 or 20 by 20 vision. A letter on the 6 by 6 line of a Snellen chart subtends 5 minutes of arc in total height, and the smallest detail like the stroke width subtends 1 minute of arc. We can imagine visually you are looking at a capital letter E from 6 meter away. That E is sized so that the entire height spans an angle of a 5 arc minutes. Each stroke or space in the E is about 1 arc minute wide. If you can resolve those details, you have 6 by 6 or 20 by 20 vision. Testing distance. Testing distance is done in 6 meters equivalent to 20 feet used for 6 by 6 vision. At this distance, light rays are nearly parallel, so the eye doesn't have to focus. It stimulates distance vision. It's long enough to represent infinity focus for the human eye. What does 6 by 6 or 20 by 20 vision mean? It represents the ability to see the 1 minute of arc. 6 by 6 or 20 by 20, you can read at 6 meters or 20 feet what a person with normal vision can. The 6 or 20 is the testing distance. The bottom number is the distance at which a normal eye can read that line. What are the procedure for testing the Snellen chart? First step, ensure the chart is at eye level. Maintain a testing distance of 6 meter or 20 feet from the patient. Lighting should be even. You must avoid glare or shadows on the chart. Second, position the patient. Have the patient stand or sit exactly 6 meters or 20 feet away. Ensure the patient wears corrective lens if applicable. Record as with correction. Instruct them not to squint or lean forward. Third point, test one eye at a time. Cover the left eye and test the right eye first. Then switch to cover the right eye and test to the left eye. Finally, test both eyes together if needed. Fourth, give instruction. Ask the patient to read aloud the smallest line they can see from top to bottom. Allow guessing if unsure, as long as it's consistent. Fifth, record the visual acuity. Note the smallest line where the patient can correctly identify at least 3 out of 5 letters. What is finger counting? Finger counting is a method used to assess very poor visual acuity when the patient cannot read any letters on Snellen chart. It is used when visual acuity is worse than 6 by 60 and the patient cannot see the largest letter on the chart even at a closer distance. Now we can see the testing procedure of finger counting. Stand in front of the patient at a known distance, example 6 meter or 3 meter or 1 meter, etc. Hold up a certain number of fingers, example 1 to 5. Ask the patient, how many fingers am I holding up? If they can't answer at that distance, move closer and repeat. And record the closest distance at which they can correctly count fingers. Next, hand movements, HM we call. Hand movement is a very low level of visual acuity testing used when a patient cannot count fingers at any distance. It is a method to determine whether a person can detect gross movement of the examiner's hand in front of their eyes. Now we can see the procedure for HM testing. First, stand directly in front of the patient, usually at 1 to 2 feet distance. Second, hold your hands up and wave it side to side. Third, ask, can you see my hand moving? Fourth, try both eyes separately. Fifth, move closer if no responses and test as close as just in front of the eye. And this is the last method, perception of light. Perception of light is a method used to check if the eye can detect light when all other forms of visual acuity like Snellen, FC, HM have failed. It refers to whether the patient can detect the presence or absence of light source without identifying any shape, movements or object. Now we can see the procedure of testing PL. Take the patient into a dark room to eliminate ambient light. Use a bright light source, example pen torch or ophthalmoscope, and ask the patient to close one eye. Test each eye separately. Fourth, shine the light from different directions like up, down, left, right. Then ask, can you see the light? From which direction is it coming also? If the patient responds correctly, record as PL positive, projection of light positive accurately. If the patient does not see the light even after multiple attempts, record as PL negative. And the patient have no perception of light, it means a total blindness. Next, decimal notations in visual acuity. It is a way of expressing visual acuity as a decimal value instead of a fraction like 6 by 6 or 20 by 20. LOGMAR chart. What is LOGMAR chart? LOGMAR stands for Logarithm of the Minimum Angle of Resolution. It is a modern standardized chart used to measure visual acuity more accurately and scientifically than the traditional Snellen chart. The main features are scale logarithmic equal steps of difficulty between lines. Lines usually 14 lines from logmar 1.0 to minus 0.3 letters per line, exactly 5 letters per line. Scoring each letter is worth 0.02 log units. Font uses Sloan letters, standardized optotypes, spacing equal spacing between letters and the lines based on letter sizes. That's all. Now we recollect the slides. Today we learnt about what is visual acuity and components of visual acuity, optotypes and Snellen chart.
Let's
Then
meet you in
full
next
detail
video.
about 1
Thank
unit of
you.
mark and 6 by what is 6 by 6 vision mean. Then